So we're here at Blue Steel Guns with Maggie. Maggie, we always appreciate you. Thank you again for always taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate that. Let me ask this: if the federal government's not coming in necessarily to look, it's more of an inventory. It's kind of like an ATF, like whether you were a winery or you made cigars or whatever the ATF.
It's an inventory check.
It's to make sure that you're checking through the tax system, essentially, what it is you need to check through the tax system, and that you're not skimming off the top or
exactly.
doing it wrong or,
like,
or doing it illegally.
You are not supposed to sell off the books.
Right. So if they're not doing that, and this is again the story that I was going to bring up. There was that time that I had gotten that call from the FBI agent, for that gun that I got from you guys because it was originally stolen or something like that, but then as it turned off, they just were off a line. But it showed me that they come in for what is that? Like what are they looking for?
That wasn't an auditor that got a hold of you. That is an entirely different branch, and when you've done screwed up something fierce.
It was a mistake, for the record.
It was. Mark hasn't screwed.
He was off by a line.
Yes.
He was off by a line.
So
it sure caught me off guard. But go ahead. I had to point that out.
I have physical bound books that take up 2 pages. One side of the book is the acquisition, where the firearm comes from, and the log of what it is. The second page is the disposition, who we have disposed the firearm to, the person legally responsible for that serial number. I can't photocopy both sides of one of these books at once. So when they came in for an investigation of a theft ring, a firearms theft ring, and I think that was spread across like 6 or 7 states and involved a lot of different individuals in a lot of trouble. They already know who they were, and they're like, okay, a couple of these turned up here. Can you tell us who brought those in and who now has possession of those? And so I took copies of my books, page 1, page 2, and all they had to do was line them up so that the header was even on both sides of the page. And sometimes if you don't realize that the header doesn't line up, you're off by a line.
And I was the unfortunate person who was the next line up or down.
And you're like, I have never had that serial number in my possession.
It was like a little tiny
22
or like a cricket kind of thing.
Yeah!
Yeah.
Right?
Like if anybody committed a crime with this, they're an idiot.
I don't know. Don't knock on the 22s.
Well, I agree, but you wouldn't pick a cricket or a little, maybe. Who knows?
You never know.
Well, how often in your years how often does that kind of thing happen? Like,
firearms are traced across the U.S. every single day. Firearms have been recovered from stolen property and from people that are doing stuff they shouldn't. Maybe, felons in possessions of firearms, or in some cases, maybe you don't know enough about one of the people you're hanging out with and you get caught up with someone who shouldn't own firearms or something like that, and you can get into trouble too. I don't know how it works, but anytime a police agency recovers a firearm, they say, okay, this is a Browning. It's a BAR Safari 2, and this is its serial number. We have this in our possession. Call Browning. They call the ATF, and the ATF starts a trace. So the ATF will go to Browning and say, we are looking for this serial number. Who did you sell it to originally? And they're like, that went to this distribution company. This distribution company then sells it to this gun store. This gun store then sold it to this individual. This individual then sold it to his uncle, who then took it back to this gun store in a different state when he passed away, and his widow sold his collection of firearms. It was then transferred to this individual who purchased it there, and that goes through the whole long chain until they find out the last person in the line to get a hold of it.
Interesting.
And the serial number each one's unique. They're like your social security numbers. There is only one issued to every single make, model.
So it's really just either an audit or they're specifically trying to track a gun.
Yes.
Did they recommend trying to track a person and what they had bought, or is that everything, or is it just the serial numbers?
It's usually just serial numbers.
Okay.
Sometimes a local police department may call us up and say, hey, we have this case number, or they'll show up in person, because once again, over the phone, I can't verify you are who you say you are. So they have to come here in person and show me all the information and ID that says that you are exactly who you say you are, and you have the right to check for this case that you are already working on. So they've already got you. I mean, most of the time, the people that they come in looking for are already being held somewhere. They've already been arrested on whatever, multiple charges and all kinds of bad stuff.
So in all cases, it's really either an auditor or a crime investigator
Yes.
of some kind. Okay.
So something's already happened, and let's say one of your firearms is stolen. You made the police report, and it turns up weeks, months, or years later involved in some sort of crime. You won't see it back until everything is finished with that case, including all the appeals that case may end up going through, which can take decades for some people.
Gotcha.
But they do come back. One of our employees is like, I had guns stolen from me 30 years ago. About 3 years ago, the cop said, hey, did you ever have this serial number in possession? He goes, well, yes, I did. Well, yeah, that's down in Lafayette County and some other state, whoever knows how many miles away. And do you have a gun store we can mail that back to you at?
Interesting.
So
So sometimes that pops up.
Sometimes there are happy endings to stories, and your babies do come back.
Well, that's good to know. That's fascinating, because it's almost like I knew pieces of it, but I didn't know the whole piece. So we really appreciate it, Maggie. Thank you. Thanks for filling in the missing links for us, as always.
Heck yeah!
Well, thank you
Happy
so
to
much.
help.
I guess we'll talk to you next time.
Great to be here. I'll see you next time.